Welcome YouTube. Today we're going to be talking about swapping an engine in your car. Now, swapping an engine looks like a difficult thing to do, but it's actually not that hard. And once I show you this stuff, it may give you the confidence to do this job yourself. So let's take a look inside this S2000. Today we're working on a Honda S2000, and you notice that I have the engine and transmission attached. You also notice that the wiring harness that goes to the ECU is connected to all the sensors on the engine, and it even runs back to the transmission itself. And this is how they install these from the factory. So doing this in your driveway is actually not that hard. The first thing that you need to do is pick up the service manual for your car and see how everything comes apart. In the case of the Honda S2000, it has a subframe, which I have over here. Now on the subframe, you'll notice there's engine mounts. Those hold the engine in place. And it also has 4 bolts right in the front for the steering rack, but the steering rack is not there. The reason the steering rack is not there is because I left it in the car for ease of swapping the motor. So if you take a look inside the car, you'll see I also left the AC compressor attached. The air conditioning is still charged. The steering rack is suspended with straps right there, and this will make the swap very easy. The whole engine assembly can be dropped in a couple hours in this car, and many mechanics will overstate the difficulty of this job. It's actually very easy to swap an engine in a Honda S2000. So take a look over here. We have the heater hose connections. You also notice the throttle cable up there in the corner. You have an air connection right there. You have a vacuum line down there. You have a fuel connection down there, another fuel line coming up there, and you have your slave down there. And so all very basic connections. Once I pull the engine up into this bay, it'll be very easy to swap over all the components. Now, in the S2000 engine bay, there are 2 fuse boxes that you have to connect your wiring harness to. There's one down here, and there's one over there. And I'll show you how I route those wires. First, let's put the engine inside of the car. In order to do this, we need to lift up the car, and then we need to slide the engine under the car. You notice that I have the engine on a crawler. That makes installing it in the car very easy. I have also attached the radiator hoses in advance. Also, I put an old valve cover on it so that the new one does not get scratched up. See how this is all messed up here? I don't want to scratch up my valve cover when I install the engine. So let's go ahead and slide this under the car. While I had this out, I did some work on this engine. I installed a baffled oil pan. I installed an OEM clutch since I'm not going to be running a supercharger on this car. This is the Moroso oil baffle. You have trap doors here, here, one over here. There's one down in here too. Where is it? There it is. And then none over here. So this is the F1 stage 2 clutch. It hasn't worn that much. And this is a new OEM Honda clutch. So I'm going to be saying goodbye to clutch buzz. You can tell it's OEM because it has Honda stamped in it. And I'm reusing my pressure plate and my old flywheel. I also rebuilt the starter motor. The S2000 is known for having a grind on startup, and what you need to do is disassemble your starter motor, clean everything, and re-grease it. Now when I pull the engine up into the bay, the first thing that I'm going to connect is the AC compressor. And you can see it down over there. The problem with this is that I can't really get a good video of it. But anyways, the AC compressor is down on the bottom there. You saw that I had it hanging before I pulled the engine up into the bay. But the first thing I do when I pull that engine up into the bay is I connect the AC compressor. And the next thing I do is I take my little transmission jack over here and I level out the engine and the transmission assembly. And I go inside the S2000. So inside the S2000 we go. Once I level out the transmission assembly and connect the transmission mounts below, I can put everything on the inside back to stock. Center console, shift knob, shift boot, everything back to stock in here. And then I have to connect everything else. So everything's leveled out now. The next thing that I would connect is wiring harness number 1. This routes down through here. And you can see that it clips on right there. It also has various connections to clip on through there. And the wire comes up into this fuse box and you just screw it in. The other harness comes up over into this fuse box, right up into here. And then there's the big ECU harness that's running down underneath here. And we have to feed it through the firewall and then connect it into our ECU. Let's go inside the car and take a look at that. Those are the ECU wires. I know we're at an angle here, but the wires come in there and plug into the ECU right there. And that's all done. After I do that, it's mainly hoses that I connect up. So the cooling system hoses, there's a lot of hoses down in here. These are the hardest hoses. And what you do is you put them in layers, and the final thing that you put on is this intake brace. It screws into the manifold down here and then down into the engine block. That intake brace makes it really hard to put the hoses in, so I always remove that before I attempt to put hoses in. You can see it just kind of goes down there and blocks off all the hoses. Also, we attach the throttle cable, you can see right here. Attach it and adjust it. Heater hoses, those are all connected. Vacuum lines like this. Brake booster line. Once everything is connected, I fill it up with fluid. I put fresh oil in it, a new oil filter. I put fresh coolant in it. The next thing that I'll do is put the subframe in place. And so again, I'll use that jack to raise the subframe up. And the subframe is only held on by 6 bolts down in here. So subframe bolt number 1 is under the arm right here. That's one of them. That's the second one. And then there's a 17 millimeter in the very back up there. And now, once we lift that subframe up in there and screw in those 6 main bolts, we can attach the engine via the engine mounts, and then we attach the lower suspension arm, so the brake is now in place, and the shock, of course. The shock is also attached to the A-arm down there, and then the sway bar. And so once all that's in place, then I can actually remove the engine hoist and the support from below. And so now the engine's in place. We tighten everything to the correct torque specifications, and you can go ahead and test start the engine now. So now when we test start the engine, we're going to want to check a few things. We'll check the heater operation, we will check the air conditioning operation, and we'll listen for any abnormal sounds, obviously. And when you first start an engine, after you've installed it, you can expect some smoke from, oil getting on the headers, oil on the exhaust, other various things. But if the engine is smoking for a long time, and there's other serious problems, you might want to shut it off. So let's go ahead and start it. So the one thing that you noticed when I started it up is that there was no scratching noise from the starter motor, and that's because we rebuilt the starter motor. I'm going to test the AC right now. Okay, so the AC is nice and cold. That check engine light is actually for the air pump. My air pump just failed. Alright, so everything is good. AC works. The only thing is my air pump failed. That actually happened before my engine failed. This air pump is a common problem on many S2000s. And instead of replacing it, it's cheaper just to buy a simulator to fix the issue. So I'll go ahead and do that. I also ordered a new intake because I'm missing some of the vacuum lines for the original intake. I also ordered a new front sway bar while this is up. And the next step for this engine is just to do a valve adjustment, put the new valve cover on, and go take it out to the racetrack. It's pretty much all set. So that is it. That's all I have for you guys. Thank you for watching. Make sure that you enjoy your car.